All right, I'm Vincent Dizenzo. I'm an elite FTS coach. I'm from Connecticut, born and raised, lived there my whole life. Been lifting since about 15, so got a lot of years under the belt. I'm turning 50 in just a few days. I honestly couldn't even remember how I got into my first powerlifting meet. I enjoyed lifting weights, and someone had recommended it as an idea, so I did my first competition at 15, and then that's what really got my bug for lifting. And then I just lifted for sports and through college, and then I didn't get back to competing again until after college. So there was a little break there, but I was exposed to it at a very young age. I think my greatest is, it's interesting because now that I have time to reflect on it and I've been competing so long, my lifts really are kind of inconsequential to me. I prefer the legacy I've kind of left with helping people and kind of what I've learned from Dave to live, learn, and pass on, which didn't resonate until I kind of walked away from high-level competition. I mean, I'm very proud of the fact that I've benched 600 raw in 3 different weight classes, benched 900 pounds equipped, and I had an all-time world record at one point in the bench press at 275. And the fact I was a top 10 lifter for over a decade, which, those are some of my to me, they mean a lot to me because I was able to put together a body of work, not necessarily, one of the greats, but a body of work that I can be proud of and that I learned enough over the years that I can pass on to other people. So that really, when I look back, is really most important to me. I really never had any low points with powerlifting because you always got out of it what you put into it. Every struggle turned into a success. There were times, one of my favorite stories or telling people is it took me 3 years to go from a 585 raw to a 600 pound raw bench. Those 15 pounds were the best gains of my life. And so some people would be like, oh my God, it took me a year to put on 5 pounds on my bench. But grinding away, you kind of really learn. The surgeries and everything I've had have all been part of it. And I can't really look back and say any part of it was bad. Had 2 hernia surgeries. I have a ruptured disc, 2 ruptured discs in my back, fully torn bicep, that had to be repaired, partially torn, and torn MCL. So a few bumps and bruises, but you can't, if you go through this sport for long enough and expect not to be injured, you're gonna be sadly disappointed. And those who do are an anomaly. Oh, I learned from my buddy over there, Matt Rhodes. Without Matt Rhodes, I would not have my sponsorship. Matt and I became training partners longer than I care to remember at Southside Gym, which was a very cool gym in Connecticut, really hardcore, good gym, powerlifting gym. And Matt and I started training together, and he had a relationship with Jim, and now I'm unfortunately friends with Jim. A lot of regrets there. Anyway, so we became friends, and I was actually sponsored by a different company. Through Matt, we had gone up to TPS, which is Murph's gym, and I got to train with Dave, and it was really cool because I'll never forget. I was sitting there, I was like, I get to train with Dave Tate, because Dave was bigger than life to me, and Dave actually goes, I get to train with Vincent Dizenzo, which I was like, I never felt like I was at an elite level. It's just not in my DNA, so to hear him refer to me as that was very cool. And he did an interview back then, which I watched, and God, I looked so fat. It was awesome. And he said, when he opened up the interview, he goes, I don't know why you're not sponsored by us. And so we just had a conversation, and I talked to my other sponsor, said, I'm going to be leaving and going over to Elite, because I really liked, I didn't care so much about getting stuff. I think that's what people want about a sponsorship. They want to get things. I want free gear. I want free this, what they can get out of it. I wanted what could I give back to people, because throughout my career, I've had a lot of people, I wouldn't have achieved what I did without other people helping me. I trained a lot on my own during times, but I've always had very influential people help me along the way. So to be able to give back, and I think that's in my nature, I think that's why I became a teacher also. So to be able to give back is a much bigger legacy than anything you'll leave on a platform, unless you're Ed Cohen. So the Operation Be Less Fat started, interestingly, a little bit of a very sad story. I had benched, my best raw bench was 605. I weighed 328 and a half, and very close miss at 630 if someone didn't touch it. But I'm not upset about that. But my brother came to that meet, and my brother suffered with weight loss issues, and he passed away as a result of complications with gastric bypass. I never necessarily, I don't even think it was consciously that I decided to start taking weight off. A little deep, but I certainly wouldn't want my parents to have to bury a second son. And so I just started this process without ever really knowing it. Just said, you know what, I'm gonna go down to the 308-pound class. So it was never really about losing weight, and I try to tell everybody this because I think it's some statistic, like 95% of people fail on their diets or gain the weight back, whereas I've lost 120 pounds and I've kept it off over 10 years. It's really only worked out to be about 12 pounds a year. And I never thought about losing 120 pounds. I didn't know where the journey was gonna go. I just said, all right, I'm gonna go to the 308 class. All right, so now I've done the 308 class, what's next? I'm gonna go to 275s. All right, now what's next? I'm gonna go 242s. So I actually recommend to people, especially now that powerlifting is more consumable, more present. You know, it was very fringe, but now a lot more people do it as a result of CrossFit. I mean, we'd go to meets, you'd find one meet a year that you could drive to, and now you can't, you know, you'll find a meet any weekend. I tell people powerlifting is a great way to lose weight because you can at least have a tangible goal. Like, to just say you wanna lose 20 pounds, you have nothing holding you to it. But when you're competing, it's like, I need to make that weight for that weight class. So kind of just move down weight classes, and that's really how Operation Be Less Fat started. I'm one of the best diet consultants and coaches ever who doesn't want to diet, or who doesn't want to consult, because I've done everything. I've done keto, I did carb backloading, I've done fasting, I have done it all, and through it all, the one thing I've learned is that it's calorie maintenance, just figuring out your calories. I'm fastidious about tracking my macros, and it just calories in versus calories out. It's math. And you know, the way I diet, I had once, Rhodes can attest to this, I once followed a strict bodybuilding diet. I had a coach for it because I wanted to do 4 weight classes within a year. And so I had ended up losing 30 pounds, 40 pounds in 3 months. And as soon as it was over, I gained 50 pounds back because I didn't learn anything. And I didn't enjoy the way I was eating. I just ate to lose weight, and it didn't work. One of the greatest things I've learned is if you can't imagine yourself doing it for a year, then don't do it. We talked about this on the podcast last night. There's just silly diets out there. If you like keto because you like to eat foods that are higher in fat and that satiates you and that works for you, that's fantastic. If you can do that for a year or more and that's what you want to do, that's fantastic. But if it's not something you can, if you read some goofy diet, you know, where you're just going to eat nothing but, you know, chicken breast and broccoli for 16 weeks and get in shape, what's your plan coming out? You have to have a plan that gets you out. And I think that's why most people fail with their diets, because mine really isn't a diet. It's just through the years, I've just massaged into what works for me. I'll tell you the best information, when someone's trying to sell you something, that's when you really need to filter out that information. There's so much amazing free information out there. There's a diet out there that I can't believe people are actually paying money for, and I'm just not gonna, you know, point a finger at somebody, but it is the oldest bodybuilding diet. It's what every bodybuilder has ever eaten since the dawn of lifting weights, and someone's selling this to people, and it irritates me so much. But sometimes, I guess, Dave has said, has told me, like, people don't appreciate information unless they pay for it sometimes. So maybe that's what they need. It holds them accountable when they're paying somebody. But there is so much free information out there. How do you disseminate it? Again, the best way to look at it is if you look at a diet and you say, I can do this for a year. Because it's only what's gonna work for you. It really is. So if you look at something There's a little science behind it. I mean, look who wrote the article, look where you're getting the information. You know, it's hard out there. We were talking about last night, there was very little information a bunch of years ago, so you kind of you learn through trial and error. Now, I think part of the problem, there's too much information. Well, I tried keto and it didn't work. Well, I'm gonna try intermittent fasting, and there is no magic bullet. It's calories in, calories out, it's math. I will tell, if you're not tracking your calories and you have a weight issue, you're most likely not gonna be successful. Now again, there's gonna be some outliers out there, but it comes down to calories in, calories out. There's no magic. It's terrible. It's a grind. And anybody who tells you differently is lying. You're gonna be, that's great advice I can pass along. If you're on a diet, you're gonna be hungry. It's gonna be hard. My wife often tells me, she goes, you make it look easy. Well, I don't wanna be, you know, a martyr about my diet. Don't sit around, oh, this is so terrible. I hate it. I mean, it's your choice. It's your life, it's your health. It's what you wanna do. So you kinda have to, you know, bite the bullet and just do the work. I worked in Manhattan. I worked in business. I had worked in advertising for a bit. And I was not fulfilled, and it left very little time for training. I was telling the guys yesterday, we're driving in the car back from the airport, and we saw a little bit of a traffic. If you know anything about Manhattan and New York, my commute was 4.5 hours a day, and I barely was getting time in for training. I was living to work, and I was pretty miserable. And I had always had an affinity for people with special needs. I worked with people with special needs when I was younger, and I just said, I'd really think I'd like to go back to become a teacher. And so my wife, my now wife, she was going to school to be a teacher and trying to reconnect with her. So I'm like, you know, there's some common ground here. So I went back to school for education and became a special education teacher. And I work with students who are moderately to severely disabled, and I love my job. I mean, it's truly my calling. It's what I was made to do. I couldn't be any happier. It's funny, I talk to people about retiring in a few years, and they're like, well, what are you gonna do to retire? I'm like, nothing. They're like, well, but you know, don't you want to keep doing? I was like, if I wanted to keep working, I would keep doing what I'm doing, because I love what I'm doing, you know. But I also love lifting. I love my free time. I love my wife. I have a very fulfilling life. So, but that education, being a teacher, I think really is why I'm good at passing along information. The problem is I don't want to monetize it. I get hit up all the time on social media, and I'm happy to help people. You know, I'm not going to spoon feed everyone, and I get people who will, you know, I'll pay you. I'm like, I don't want to be paid. I'm happy to help out. I'm happy to give some people some information, but I find the people who can take information for themselves and run with it are the ones who are successful. The ones who want to get spoon-fed everything are usually not so much, and I only have so much time for, I'm not Dave Tate. I can't do 10,000 questions in a day because he does one set of squats. I don't know, he has more time than I do. Shaky squats at that. Dave, I love you. My greatest legacy is that I get people who message me and ask me questions about dieting. And there are people who've come back who've lost 60 pounds, 90 pounds, I've had someone who's lost over 100 pounds, and just that I've inspired them. And the numbers I did on the platform, I'm proud of, but I often say, people remember greatness and lifting, not numbers. I know Eddie Cohn's the greatest lifter of all time. I couldn't tell you what one of his lifts are. I'm not gonna be remembered in that realm. You know, my lifts mean something to me, and I quickly learned that the day after I set a world record, when I had to go to work on Monday and there wasn't a parade and no one else in the world cared, except for the person I beat. It was 2 people actually, but anyway. But the legacy I'll leave behind is, if I helped a few people lose some weight and better their lives and feel good about themselves, that's really the legacy that means the most to me. And I will say, you know, throwing back to Dave, is that I didn't know what live, learn, pass on was until I stopped competing at a high level, because that's a very selfish thing. For anybody who, competing at a high level is very selfish. But I think when I stopped competing, I was afraid I might not be relevant anymore. And I'm actually more relevant than I've ever been as a result of this journey that I've had that's been able to help people and change their lives for the better. So that's the legacy I want to leave. And I hope I am leaving. And at least I know I've affected some people positively. And feel free to reach out to me. Again, I like to get people on the right path. I'm not going to spoon feed you, but I've been there. I mean, that's 120 pounds. There's not a lot of people who can say they've lost 120 pounds and have kept it off.